Okay, I don't think some of you understand just how bad of an idea this is. I've got about 4 days to learn a totally new engine and then immediately jump into a 72-hour game jam. Now, you're probably asking, why am I doing something so profoundly stupid? Well, it's quite simple. Content. It's Sunday evening now and the game starts on Friday. That means I have 1 night and 4 days to learn Godot before I have to squeeze out a game in the damn 72-hour window. This is gonna go up in flames, but, fire is pretty or something. I found this beginner crash course on Godot on YouTube and I followed it. Due to a combination of just general stupidity and also the fact I was using Godot 4, and most of the videos online are still older versions, there were some points where even if I followed a tutorial, it wouldn't work. So I'd sometimes have to figure out different code to do the same thing. I really got burnt by this when I tried to make Flappy Bird. I was able to get everything set up just fine, but I wasn't comfortable enough with Godot's language GD script to make the pipe spawn in at a random elevation. Because it wasn't too massive of a problem, I got it working relatively quickly, although still not as easily as I would have liked. Making the score increase, on the other hand, really threw me off for a while. This was my first introduction to signals. Because I've used Unity and Unreal in the past, I'm used to being able to reference other scripts very easily. However, Godot uses scenes and nodes to arrange everything. To put it very simply, a scene is basically like a prefab in Unity or like an actor that has a bunch of blueprint components attached to it in Unreal. A node is pretty much a scriptable property or trait of a scene. So you may set up a character scene which has a collision node attached to it, a sprite node attached to it, among other nodes. What this means is that you can't directly reference other scripts unless it's part of the same scene, as far as I'm aware anyway. If I'm wrong about that, please, by all means, correct me in the comments. Anyway, you have to use signals to communicate between scripts and other scenes. It's pretty easy once you get a hold of it, but just because it was different from what I'm used to, it took a while to grasp. So after that whole ordeal, we had Flappy Bird. Now the jam was approaching, and I really only knew how to set up scene and what words I should use to look up problems. That's okay though, because, well, honestly, that's really all you need for a simple project. So the game jam I was participating in was the 27th Scorespace Game Jam. The deal here is to make a game all about racking up points and beating the high score. The main rule here was that you had to have a leaderboard people could compete with each other in. This will be very important later. For the game jam theme, you could pick between Micro World or Cats plus Guns, or of course, combine them if you so desire. I'll give you just one guess which one I chose. Okay, on to the actual game jam. So, what are we even going to make? Well, don't ask why, because I really couldn't tell you. But the first idea that really stuck was to make an endless runner where you play as the cat and get launched out of a big gun. I think I subconsciously drew inspiration from this weird little game called Burrito Bison that I found a few years back. First off, I made a simple pixel art cat. I know usually art should be saved for last, but I hadn't realized that you could use the Godot icon as a placeholder sprite at the time. Now, of course, the gameplay was going to be physics-based, so that means I had to add physics. Great, we have a cat, it's affected by gravity, almost a finished game already. Just to make sure the cat would stay on the screen, I added some invisible borders, and also let the player push the cat around a bit. I may have had a little too much fun throwing the cat around the scene. Now, this is the Scorespace Jam, so clearly we need to add a score to the game. To start, I made a score counter that would increase as the player flew around without dying. But the game still needs something to make it unique, quirky, and not like the other games. So far, we've utilized half the theme, so I have to use guns to make it unique. And then, I came up with a genius idea that's completely original and has never been done before, especially not on this channel. The cat would have a gun that can be used for movement. I want to say this was a total coincidence. I don't have any obsession with shoot-to-move mechanics or anything. I don't think so, anyway. They're just apparently really convenient for making a game feel different. So I added a gun the player could use to move around with. For now, I just reused the cat sprite, which looks really weird, but it works, so I'm not complaining. Next, I added an enemy that would shoot at you. I think I'm beginning to see a pattern. For now, it's also using the cat sprite, and its gun is also cat sprite, and its bullets are too. But here's a slight problem. The bullets do this. As amusing as the bullet physics may be, they pretty much broke the game, so I had to make them boring and normal. I also limited the amount of bullets the player could shoot as well as the fire rate so that you couldn't just have a hose of bullets, even if that was incredibly fun. Now, for the enemies, I made them mice. Normally, you'd expect dogs to be the enemies in a game about cats, but I had a sneaking suspicion that shooting them wouldn't go over too well. So mice it is. I also made them spawn in forever. I had to limit their fire rate though, because we weren't trying to lean all the way into the bullet hell genre. Polish time. I added a floor and a background and, well, that's about it. I did make it so that the floor would scroll at different speeds based on how the player was moving, which I thought was pretty cool, but as I said, that's about it. Let's add death to the game. Even though I may not fear the Reaper, we're going to make sure that the player does. I gave the player 9 lives because, well, you know, and some iframes so that you wouldn't absolutely be demolished immediately. So then I added some UI to the game and gave you points for taking out the enemies. Then it was time to make a game over screen. Do you remember way back at the beginning of the video where I said that the leaderboard would be important later? Yeah, well, that would be now. I had to add one to qualify for the jam, but I don't know what I'm doing. Games Jam page recommended to use this service called Loot Locker because it was, quote, easy to add to your game.
You sit on a throne of lies.
So, with a couple hours left, I stayed up all night trying to figure out the internet code voodoo magic. Which I did not. And really, after spending a week putting in roughly 18-hour days every day, I just didn't have the capacity to fight through it in as little time as I had. Was this a moment of weakness? Well, yes, but I think it was warranted. Hopefully you won't hold this against me. So, technically I didn't finish the game, but it is playable. While I am disappointed that I failed the game jam, I still learned a ton about the Godot engine, which was really my goal from the start. So, I may have failed the game jam, but I think overall, this was a success. I actually quite enjoyed this project, so if you want to see it finished, drop a like and let me know in the comments, because I'll have no idea otherwise. Will I pull a stunt like this again? I mean, if it gets the views, yes.